Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, a recap of a wild night in Mississippi primary politics. The lieutenant governor fights off two Republican contenders and avoids a runoff entirely. The governor himself did the same and advances to a general election fight for a second term. We'll hear from Delbert, Hosemann, Chris McDaniel, Tate, Reeves, and Brandon Presley. What does the lieutenant governor's primary in particular tell us about current voting trends? We'll have analysis from Austin Barbour and Brandon Jones. And in Hinds County, the dust has hardly settled after a mixed bag of results for incumbent supervisors. And one primary loser is crying foul. It's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. In the end, Tuesday night, Mississippi's lieutenant governor set himself up for an easy cruise to the general election and a likely second term of office. Delbert Hosemann took 52% of the vote in Tuesday's Republican primary, avoiding a runoff despite a forceful challenge from Chris McDaniel. He easily eclipsed a third candidate, Tiffany Longino. But his 43% support was not enough to force Hosemann into a one-on-one contest. Both men spoke late Tuesday night as Hosemann locked in his victory.
They did call a race?
Incumbent Republican Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann defeated State Senator Chris McDaniel and Tiffany Longino in the Republican primary, receiving 51% of the vote. In his remarks to supporters in Jackson, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann pledged to continue his work on health care, education, and infrastructure, while also commenting on what has been an overwhelmingly negative campaign run by Senator McDaniel.
We want to build a state where our children and our grandchildren will come and live, this right here. Our people sent them a message. This campaign shows that you can't run negative the whole time. That's for all those young men and women out there that are looking and aspiring to be in public service. Go offer yourself, because negative campaign never wins, and it didn't win tonight.
In a statement, Senator Chris McDaniel said, quote, "Tonight, it's clear that Delbert Hosemann heard you, and I know grassroots patriots will continue to encourage him to fight for Mississippi values and our conservative principles. Mississippi's future deserves a fighting chance." Lieutenant Governor Hosemann also hinted at future legislative efforts on campaign finance reform amidst an ongoing investigation into McDaniel's finances.
There are obviously things that need to be done in regards to campaign finance reform and how that is handled in our state. I will tell you, my senators are probably going to run past me on drafting that legislation. The first bill may be campaign finance report, and we had $885,000 dumped on Mississippi to try to steal this election.
Reporting in Jackson, Richard Lake, 12 News.
Good coming into this race that it was going to be very, very difficult. First of all, incumbents win 90+% of the time. We understand that. We also understood we would be outraised tremendously, and we were outraised tremendously. I think you probably outraised us 6 or 7 to 1, around spending 6 to 7 to 1. So we knew right away the race was going to be difficult. Life is difficult. Being a conservative sometimes is difficult. Trying to be principled is difficult. And yet I've always tried to do my very best to live up to my standards. When I was elected in Jones County back in 2007, I fought for conservatism. I fought for those principles. And I've been unyielding in fighting for those principles. I would rather lose retaining those principles than to win neglecting or sacrificing those principles.
There were some fascinating geographic factors in play in the lieutenant governor's race. Political analysts Brandon Jones and Austin Barbour joined me and my colleague Melanie Tuesday night. Here's what they had to say as the vote numbers were coming in.
It is the biggest race because it's the most money has been spent on this race. And yeah, clearly Hosemann has got a pretty comfortable lead right now. He has surpassed the 50% threshold, which we didn't think we were going to be talking about tonight. But the third candidate in the race has been hovering around 6%. Hosemann's at 52. When I look at county numbers that really matter, the big counties that have a lot of population, Hosemann is really surprising a lot of people. Right here in the metro area, when you look at Madison County, half the votes are in Madison County, and Hosemann is up nearly 40 points. That is phenomenal. When you look at Rankin County, Hosemann's up about 17. McDaniel doing really well in his home county, up 50 points there, and some of his surrounding counties. Big counties for McDaniel. He's going to win DeSoto County. He's going to win Pearl River County. But some of the coastal counties, where my friend is from, Jackson County, Harrison County, also going, really big for Hosemann. So he seems to be in the driver's seat at this point in time.
This was something that we saw just, yesterday with Mayor Mary Hawkins of Madison making saying, she would only vote for Chris McDaniel. Do you think it would have affected it? Do you think it didn't affect it as much?
Well,
it doesn't appear.
We had a little update. 22% more came in, and it's still a 35-point lead there for Hosemann. So let's let all the votes come in. Maybe the city of Madison hadn't come in. We just don't know yet, Melanie. But I love looking at returns. We can geek out on it, Brandon, as they come in.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about this particular return is conventional wisdom, Austin, has been that it had to be over 300,000 Republican voters for Delbert to win and to feel good about it. What we're seeing here is Delbert winning in places that McDaniel won during the Thad Cochran election. And so all the different things that folks were comparing this race to in terms of the historical margin and where they thought the numbers had to be are kind of getting blown up tonight with these early returns, because Hosemann is overperforming in places that were suspected to be pretty good for McDaniel. And I think this, you mentioned the mayor's endorsement. One thing about mayor's endorsements is that they don't tend to be effective outside of the city lines. And so I think we might be seeing a little bit of that in Madison, because we do have an appreciable number of the vote in there, and it just doesn't look too good.
Yeah, the firewall in the Pine Belt that you just said smartly that McDaniel had in 14, he's losing it right now. Forest County, 21% is in. Lamar County is nearly all in. A lot of people that live in the Hattiesburg area, and McDaniel's probably going to lose both of those counties.
We just heard from Chris McDaniel, who was, I don't know if that was, he was conceding at that point, but the race has not officially been called, but we know that Lieutenant Governor has been leading pretty much most of the night.
Sounded a lot like a concession speech to me.
Me too.
Yeah, his pathways are almost non-existent at this point in time. Listen, the big question going into this race that folks who follow politics were trying to ask themselves is, what was the turnout going to be? 383,000 people voted, most ever in a Republican primary in 2019. But we had a governor's primary then. This time, we're not going to get to 383, but it's going to be a big turnout. I think it's going to well exceed 360,000. The Hosemann campaign wanted a big turnout. They knew that their cash advantage and name ID with their candidate would help them if they got to that. They're clearly getting a big turnout, and the results are very favorable for them. For the big turnout that they wanted has put Lieutenant Governor Hosemann in a very strong position with 75% of the vote in.
Yeah, what do you think sparked the turnout? What motivated people to come out? Because usually in primaries, it depends on the races, but people usually turn out for.
And you're from the coast originally.
Yeah, I think we're increasingly concentrating on these primaries across the state, because the way that our legislature is drawn, the way that local politics works, you come out because so many of these decisions are made in the primary. And so I think, there's a little bit of that, just natural. As Austin said, it's going to be a little bit lower than it was 4 years ago, but conventional wisdom was that Delbert needed to exceed 300,000. It looks like that's going to happen. It looks like McDaniel might come in around 150, which is kind of what people said. And so, again, Hosemann did outperform in some areas that McDaniel did well in and was expected to do well in. I don't know that it's anything that magic. I think this is kind of a pretty expected turnout and a pretty expected result.
Yeah, big stories of tonight for the LG's race are certainly go look at the Pine Belt. Forest County, Lamar County, Marion County, those were strongholds for McDaniel in his race in 2014. He's going to lose all three of those tonight. Madison County, which is a county that was a lot of conversations about Madison County. Hosemann is up nearly, I think he's up 30 points. In Madison County, going to win big in Hinds County, the big stronghold of Rankin County for the Republican primary. Hosemann's going to win it big, and then of course on the coast. Those are the big stories. And even when you go all the way up to Northeast Mississippi, which is a rural part of Mississippi, of course, where people thought McDaniel would do well, just not happening for him up there tonight.
That's Austin Barbour and Brandon Jones with us Tuesday night. Lieutenant Governor Hosemann now advances to a general election challenge by little-known Democratic nominee Ryan Grover. But Governor Tate Reeves will likely face a stiffer challenge from Democrat Brandon Presley. We'll look ahead to November 7th when Mississippi Insight continues. Governor Tate Reeves made short work of two GOP challengers Tuesday night, but his focus remains fixed on Brandon Presley. Neither John Witcher nor David Hardigree posed much of a challenge to the incumbent Tuesday. Reeves drew 3 out of every 4 Republican voters. He addressed his supporters at their watch party at the Old Capitol Inn in Jackson. Reeves' Democratic challenger had no competition Tuesday night, but a day after the primaries, Public Service Commissioner Brandon Presley was back in the metro area, kicking off his general election campaign at Jackson's Hallamow's restaurant.
Presley, it's turned kind of into almost like a dogfight between you and Governor Tate Reeves right now. A lot of different rhetoric flying around. Can we expect any more of that going into November?
Well, you know, here's the thing about it. As we go forward in this campaign, the people of Mississippi are serious about the problems we have. I don't count it as rhetoric when you talk about somebody's record. Not a personal attack, but simply about the failures of Tate Reeves' governorship. And the people of Mississippi know that. They're ready to turn the page on him. We hear it every day. That's why I talk about a broad coalition of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. And we're going to continue carrying the message of reform to state government. I am not content with the system as it is. I hate the system as it is. If I'm elected governor, we're going to make sure we change it.
Commissioner, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann hinted at possible campaign finance reform legislation coming from the first day of the session last night. If elected, how would you work with him to get that done?
I would meet with him prior to the session. I would work with whoever the Lieutenant Governor is. Lieutenant Governor Hosemann's proposed it. I would sit down and work with him day one. We would find ways to clean up the campaign finance laws in Mississippi, make them more transparent, make them more stringent. I support putting caps on individual donations, and I think we would find a way to get that done. I'm glad to hear him say that.
One of the biggest things Governor Reeves said last night is that you do not have Mississippi values in mind. You want to have a comment on that?
Well, Governor Reeves is living in La La Land if he doesn't think I have Mississippi values. Look, I come from a town of 1,906 people. I was raised up by a single mother. Everybody can't be born rich and lucky, and I wasn't. And so I think my values of hard work, growing up in a struggling family, when compared to his, is much more in line with the average Mississippian than he is.
On top of that, Governor Reeves has been in a race before. It was a close race last time. Do you expect it to be even closer?
I've never lost an election. I don't plan to lose this one.
One of the applause lines that he used in the Sherman County Fair, and again last night was a Republican crowd, was a vote for you to be a vote for Biden, Benny, and Grant. May not be that vote, but what do you say to people who want to cut off?
Well, I'd say a vote for him is a vote for the corrupt system in place. A vote for him is a vote for a failing health care system. A vote for him is a vote for the highest sales tax on groceries in America. And, you know, I'm my old man, I always have been. A vote for Brandon Presley is a vote for Brandon Presley.
We'll hear plenty more from these two politicians as we head into the fall. Coming up, the changing faces of Hinds County politics. It's Mississippi Insight, only on WJTV. Tuesday saw some big elections in Hinds County. Sheriff Tyree Jones won re-election in a rematch against Marshawn Chrysler. So did District 1 Supervisor Robert Graham, but he was the only Hinds County Board incumbent to avoid a runoff. David Archie was not so lucky. The District 2 Supervisor lost outright to challenger Anthony Smith on Tuesday. And though county election authorities deny any wrongdoing, he's alleging election fraud.
This is corruption and fraud at its best in Mississippi. ES&S, which is election system and software, has been together on the winning side for these candidates.
Runoffs will determine who fills the rest of the board seats in Hinds County. District 3's Cordell Calhoun appears headed to a runoff with Deborah Butler Dixon. She just barely missed getting 50% of the vote. In District 4, Vern Gavin is headed to a runoff with Wanda Evers. Those two drew the most votes out of 7 candidates. And in District 5, Bobby McGowan and Ashley Floyd sit atop another crowded field of contenders. Runoff elections will be held on August 29th. And we'll be right back. If you have comments or questions about today's show or suggestions for an interview or segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@WJTV.com. Big thanks to Austin Barbour and Brandon Jones for their insight this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.